Tasmania. It's a funny little island off the southeastern coast of Australia's mainland, often compared to other little islands off the southeastern coast of other mainlands, such as this one in the United States. However, the main difference between the two is that no US presidents have ever visited the island of Tasmania. There must be something that this island has that Tasmania doesn't that makes them not want to visit. But you see, US presidents aren't the only people that avoid Tasmania like the plague. Most Australians also don't have anything good to say about this little island either. So in this video, I'll be going through everything that you need to know about Tasmania, the positives, the negatives, and everything in between. It's time for me to stop the waffle. Let's get into it. But before we get into it, if you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. More than half of you who watch these videos regularly aren't subscribed, and I know it's a pain in the ass to do it on TV, which is where most of you guys watch these videos, but it really helps me out. First up, of course, we're going to talk about the Tasmanian stereotypes. Now, Tasmania itself is sort of like the red-headed stepchild of Australia. It's the butt of all jokes, people don't respect it, and it's basically just viewed as a complete and utter shithole. But by far the most prominent stereotype about Tasmania is that the family tree of every resident looks like a Christmas wreath. Long story short, everyone's parents are siblings, and everyone marries their cousin. It's basically the Alabama of the Southern Hemisphere. Now, this joke is as old as time because basically the island's so small, everyone knows each other. And that's where the jokes come from that Tasmanians have 2 heads, 3 eyes, or if you're like me, 3 legs. But I've never been to Tasmania, so that must be something else. But this myth became so widespread that apparently the Menzies Institution actually looked into this and found that Tasmanians are no more inbred than the rest of Australia. So there you go. Next up, of course, we'll talk about how you get there. Now, there's 2 normal ways, and of course unlimited stupid ways if you got your own boat or plane. But most normal people either catch the Denpasar Express from Melbourne Airport to Hobart, which is usually the cheapest option. But of course, the most famous option of these 2 is the Spirit of Tasmania, which is a 10-hour boat ride from Melbourne to Tasmania. But while we're on the topic of the Spirit of Tasmania, I've got a couple yarns that need to be spun about it. You see, while this boat basically goes in a straight line from Melbourne to Devonport, it's not that straightforward. It has to cross the Bass Strait. And for those who don't know, the Bass Strait is pretty rough, which means the Spirit of Tasmania has had a few hairy voyages in its time. Most recently, in February of 2026, the ship had to abort mission literally 50 meters after it left the dock because one of the passengers was so unruly that they literally had no other option. Now, no one really knows what caused this passenger to go hog wild, but my theory is he set sail a little too early and was on the high seas with Captain Morgan. But what we do have here is a witness account from someone who was on the boat, and it's pretty interesting. This is a quote from the witness Ian McLean. I looked over and this meth head was walking towards me. As he's walked past, he's threatened to kill 2 female staff. I thought, this isn't on, and sort of challenged him. And then he had a go at me. He said, "Don't you bother me," which is a bit rich from a junkie threatening to kill people when they're all stuck on a boat with him for 10 hours. Apparently they then herded him away from all the other passengers, down an escalator where he smashed all the lights, where the Tasmanian man was then later arrested by police. Now, that's just the most recent story. Let's put the DeLorean in third and head back 10 years ago to 2016. The Spirit was making its usual route from Melbourne to Tasmania when all of a sudden the seas turned to shit, basically turning the inside of this boat into a pinball machine. But instead of pinballs, it was filled with cars and trucks. Now, what you're watching here is some video taken by a passenger on board of this absolute shipwreck of a trip, but that's not even the main part. If you turn your gaze inside of the ship, specifically to where the cars are all parked, the Spirit of Tasmania basically turned into a floating car crusher, mainly due to this truck trailer that was sliding to and fro, mincing every vehicle in the process. And as one passenger said, it's gonna be a big insurance claim. And once again, on a voyage from Melbourne to Devonport in 2005, the Spirit was smashed with rough seas and big waves, reportedly up to 20 meters tall, which ended up smashing out quite a few of the portholes, causing the ship to flood, passengers to panic, and almost causing our own version of the Titanic. However, these windows were very high up, and besides minor flooding and damage, the ship was A-OK. Now, the Spirit of Tasmania used to board in Port Melbourne and drive all the way down to Devonport, but due to the fact that it's probably getting more and more expensive to hire the spot in Port Melbourne and nobody wants to go to Tasmania because it's a shithole, they've moved it down to Geelong. But I guess that sort of lets you down a little bit easier. Rather than coming straight from the prestigious suburb of Port Melbourne, you get a little bit of a taster coming from Geelong. But as I mentioned before, these aren't the only 2 options to get to the island of Tasmania. In 1977, Hans Tholstrup managed to drive his Morris Moke across the Bass Strait and into Tasmania. Tasmania. So those are the main ways of getting into Tasmania. But that begs the question, why would you want to go to Tasmania in the first place? And that's a good one. For starters, the weather is atrocious all year round. Melbourne is pretty notorious for having shit weather. Basically, the way that our weather works is down south we have Antarctica and up north is hot deserts. So basically, depending on which way the wind blows, it's either 40 degrees or minus 40, raining or bone dry. Sometimes all four in one day. Now imagine you're in the middle of Antarctica and Melbourne. It's basically shit all year round. So people aren't going to Tasmania to enjoy the beach. However, Tasmania has some of the most beautiful beaches in Australia. I mean, just look at this one. Tasmania's nature and wildlife is absolutely spectacular. People make the pilgrimage down here to do hiking, bike riding, all that sort of hippie stuff, but most notably, four-wheel driving. According to all the experts, Tasmania has some of the most fun and challenging four-wheel drive tracks in the world. And due to the fact that the weather's shit all year round, it's basically always muddy, which of course is always a lot of fun. And then of course, if you manage to make it up any of the mountains through all the mud, the views are absolutely hectic. Anyway, that's enough promo for Tasmania's tourism department. I'm not getting paid. Next up, we're going to get into some of Tasmania's celebrities. Starting off with Neil the Seal. This one's been highly requested since the dawn of time, and Ash Q Lee finally gets what they asked for. Now, for those of you whose IQ starts with a decimal point, Neil the Seal is a seal whose name is Neil. Anyway, you may be asking, what's so important about Neil the Seal? Well, Neil the Seal loves to thrash cones, and I'd say that he's the best at smashing cones on the whole island, and there is some fierce competition down in Tasmania. Neil is a southern elephant seal born in 2020, and in 2022 he became a household name. Now apparently seals have a month-long molting period, and Neil spent his month in Hobart. And while most people left him alone, some people didn't, causing members of the public to set up cones around him to keep the rascals away, and not long after, Neil just started to munch them. But this isn't the only thing Neil's become famous for. You see, Neil's pretty acclimatized to humans and just doesn't give a fuck. Some of the notable things that Neil the Seal has done include lying in this lady's front yard for hours right in front of her car so that she couldn't get in, lying in the middle of the road. Get off the road, dickhead! Breaking infrastructure, wasting police resources, chasing c***s down, and of course, fiending for a cone. He's also got a huge social media presence with over 1 million followers on TikTok, but according to my research, he doesn't actually run the account because he doesn't have an iPhone that I know of, so I think somebody else might be running it for him. So go check it out if you want to see what Neil gets up to. But as far as I'm aware, Neil's given up the life of crime, and he's pretty much on the straight and narrow these days. I haven't really heard much about him since 2025, but I honestly wouldn't know, so if there's anyone watching from Tasmania that's seen Neil in recent times, let us know in the comments. Some other famous Tasmanian animals include the Tasmanian tiger, which is extinct, and the Tasmanian devil, which is almost extinct, mostly because of a weird sort of cancer which is one of only 2 transmissible cancers in the world, which is mostly passed on during either fighting or mating, sort of like herpes for animals. Some other Tasmanian celebrities include Darren from Bogan Hunters, who have featured a lot on this channel, and I went into the depths of his story in my Australia's Greatest Drivers video, but long story short, he was crowned Australia's Greatest Bogan, which of course the trophy was a VS Ute with a rattle can paint job, which is a pretty ironic trophy due to the fact that he's known as Tasmania's second worst driver and is actually banned from driving. Another thing that I love about Tasmania is they have some really interesting named places. For starters, they have the most racist place in Australia. They've since changed the name and scrubbed it from all maps, but it's basically a little island off the northwestern coast called, but they've also got a place called Bottom Hole and Bacon and Egg Bay. But recently there's been some pretty sad news to come out of Tasmania. For the last 145 years, the James Bogues Brewing Company has been brewing beer in Tasmania. But the brewery is set to be shut down by November and will be brewed in either Queensland or New South Wales. And another fun fact about Tasmania is that this video was filmed there and these two are locals. But one of my favourite stories about Tasmania has to be the 2009 story of the wallabies in the opium fields. For those of you who don't know, Tasmania produce roughly 50% of the world's legal opium poppy supply. And opium is used to make morphine, codeine, heroin. I think you get the gist. But Tasmania produces 50% of the legal medicinal supply, which I guess can also explain why Tasmanians are so cooked. But in 2009, there'd be mysterious crop circles appearing in these poppy fields. Now, the first logical conclusion was that it was the aliens, but that couldn't be proved. But after a little bit of research, it was discovered that local wallabies had been making their way into the fields, going ham on these poppies and getting stoned off their guts, and then basically just destroying everything in their wake due to the fact that they were severely incapacitated. incapacitated. Apparently they'd come, eat the poppies, and then when they'd have enough, they'd do quote-unquote circle work in the field, and then rinse and repeat. But vets weren't too sure if they were actually getting stoned off of them, because they weren't really showing signs of addiction, or displaying any symptoms that humans get when they have too much opium, like bowel issues, etc. However, one of the vets did say they were acting a little bit out of the ordinary compared to what you'd normally see wild wallabies doing. And look, I'm no scientist, but I would say if you're chewing on the flower that's used to make heroin or morphine, there's got to be some sort of side effect. So I of course am on team heroin wallabies. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, you'll probably enjoy one of these too. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment and share, and I'll see all of you guys in the next one.